We have present Joseph Talisano, Kathy Devlin, Bruce Devlin, Paul Hart, and Bill Salka, Mike Parker. We have our good friend and auditor, Mike DeManter, here, and I'd like to turn the meeting over to him at this point.
All right. I'm just going to ask you to pass one down.
That'd be great.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Again, my name's Mike Van Deventer. I'm a partner at Mahoney Sable, ultimately responsible for overseeing the town, and we'll be issuing the reports on behalf of the firm. Carolina Swall was the manager on the audit this year. So she's worked on the audit really the last couple of years. But together, she was responsible for the day-to-day execution of our procedures, and I'm here to present the results of the audit. So I don't know, Brian, did you send the financial statements?
No, I hadn't sent them out to anybody. No.
So there's multiple reports that we do issue. We do issue financial statements, federal and state single audit reports, a governance letter. So again, all those are in draft form at this point, and this is ultimately a summary of all of that information. I certainly encourage board members, once those reports are finalized, to review them, and if you have questions, make sure you're asking them. So, all right, with that, I'd like to jump into the presentation and turn to slide 2. As far as the scope of work, no changes from what has been performed in prior years. We did do an audit of the town's financial statements. We performed that audit in accordance with both the auditing standards issued by the American Institute of Public Accountants, as well as the government auditing standards issued by the Government Accountability Office. In addition, based on the level of federal and state funding that was received and expended by the town, we did perform both federal and state single audits. We also perform and agreed upon procedures on the end of school year reports that are required to be filed by the school district with the Department of Education. In addition to those test services, we do perform some non-audit services for the town. So we do assist in the preparation of the financial statements, the schedule of federal awards, the schedule of state financial assistance, and related notes. We also assist in converting the town's governmental fund financial statements to the government-wide financial statements. We also assist in the preparation of the trial balances for the school district's pension trust fund, the other employment benefit trust fund, the dental self-insurance fund, and the school grants and activity funds. In order for us to be able to perform those services and remain independent of the town, management is required to oversee those services and ultimately accept responsibility for them. Again, Brian is the Chief Financial Officer, and Stephanie Levine is Director of Business Services, have accepted responsibility for those services. Again, issue a number of reports. In terms of the report on the financial statements, we will be issuing unmodified opinions on your financial statements. Again, we issue an unmodified opinion when we've concluded that the financial statements have been presented fairly in all material respects, in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America, and that is as established by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. I'd like to point out that our opinion does provide a reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free from a material misstatement, whether due to error or fraud. Again, we're not providing absolute assurance. We do not test every transaction. We do utilize sampling in our audit methodology. The financial statements do include estimates, so again, we can't provide absolute assurance. In addition to the report on the financial statements, we do also issue a report on compliance and on internal control over financial reporting. In this report, we do not actually express an opinion on the town's compliance and regulations or on the effectiveness of the town's internal controls. Essentially, during the course of performing the financial statement audit, if we identified what we consider to be a material weakness, significant deficiency, or a material non-compliance with laws and regulations, we are required to include it in this report. Again, we're not reporting any such matters. In connection with the federal single audit, we issue a report at the federal award level. In this report, we do actually express an opinion on your compliance with your major federal programs. For fiscal year 2024, the total federal awards that were expended was approximately $1.2 million. Your major program was the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds. That totaled about $531,000. We did issue unmodified clean opinions on that program, and again, we did not report any deficiencies or material weaknesses over your grant compliance. We issue a similar report in connection with the state single audit. For fiscal year 2024, the total state financial assistance that was received was about $10.3 million. Of that amount, approximately $2.3 million was considered non-exempt and subject to our compliance testing. Major programs were the tiered payment in lieu of taxes, the Town Aid Road Grant, and then the Small Town Economic Assistance Program. Again, issue unmodified clean opinion over compliance with those programs, and we're not reporting any deficiencies or material weaknesses over grant compliance.
Can you explain what's meant by non-exempt, the 2.3 million?
Yep, so the state is responsible for the State Single Audit Act and basically instructing auditors what we're required to test. There's certain programs, the education stabilization funds, the education cost sharing funds, that are considered exempt from our testing. They don't want us to do any testing on that.
Got it.
So again, that's probably the majority of what that exempt funding is.
Okay, thank you.
Next section goes over your financial highlights. Again, there are multiple statements within your financial statements. The first over your general fund budgetary highlights. Again, your original budget for fiscal year 24 provided for the use of fund balance of about $494,000. Your final budget did include an additional appropriation from fund balance of about $62,000. So that resulted in an overall planned use of fund balance of about $556,000. Your actual change in fund balance was an increase of $430,000. So that resulted in an overall favorable budgetary variance of about $986,000. That variance was driven by a favorable variance on revenues and other financing sources of approximately $876,000. Again, favorable variances on property taxes, state aid, building permits, and interest income on short-term investments. Then overall, your overall expenditures and other financing uses were under budget by about $110,000. Next slide goes over your governmental fund financial highlights. So this includes your general fund on a GAAP basis, as well as all of your special revenue and capital project funds. As of June 30, 2024, your total combined ending fund balances were approximately $12.4 million. That was a small decrease of about $15,000 from the prior year. $12.4 million, you have about $7.3 million in your general fund. That was an increase of about $476,000 from the prior year. The 7.3 was considered unassigned, and that represented about 18.4%, or just 2.2 months of your town's fiscal year 2025 budgetary expenditure appropriations. All of your other funds had an ending fund balance of about $6 million. That was a decrease of about $491,000 from the prior year, and those amounts are either restricted, committed for specific purposes. And again, there's detailed schedules of each individual fund that's included in your financial statement. The town was reporting 2 fund balance deficits as of June 30, 2024. There was a deficit in the capital equipment fund, $49,000, and then in the school lunch fund of about $15,000. Again, both of those are temporary deficits that are expected to be funded in fiscal year 25. Next slide goes over your government-wide financial highlights. This includes your governmental funds converted to a full accrual basis of accounting, so it captures all of your capital assets as well as all of your long-term liabilities. The focus on the government-wide financial statements from a user perspective is on your overall long-term liabilities. The town is reporting a positive unrestricted net position of about $6.7 million. The contributing factors are really your general fund and other unrestricted reserves that are held in your other governmental funds, so your capital funds, and then the overall funded status of your pension and other post-employment benefit plans. Again, the town plan is currently 103% funded. No significant changes from the prior year. The firefighters plan did decrease significantly. That plan is now 54% funded. That decrease reflects the enhanced benefits that were authorized. Even though, again, the contributions will be increased in future years, the liability that gets reflected as of June 30 captures that additional benefit. The Board of Education plan is about 92% funded. Again, no significant changes from the prior year. And then your other post-employment benefit plan is approximately 40% funded. No significant changes from the prior year. And again, just remembering that the trust was established in fiscal year 2019.
So the firefighters was a result of a contract change?
No, that's the volunteers. They changed the amount that they earn per year from $5 for every year of service to $10. So it's a larger outlay to them, which creates a bigger long-term liability based on the number of active participants in the plan.
When do you think you'll clean that up?
It's going to take a few years.
2 years.
But between work through the budgetary process and the pension committee is kind of restructuring how they're investing the funds to get larger gains. We're hoping it's going to take 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
Is our guess.
Yep. And the actuaries, they always take that into consideration in
Yep.
terms of the funding status and how much you need to contribute moving forward. So as long as you're making the actuarial recommended contributions,
Fine.
you'll be fine. Yep. All right, and then the last section goes over our required communications. The first item here talks about our responsibility under our auditing standards. Although we do assist in the preparation of the financial statements, they are the responsibility of management. Again, it's our responsibility to perform our procedures and express opinions on those financial statements. I'm happy to report no changes in the overall scope of work or the timing of the work that was originally agreed upon. In terms of significant audit findings, there were no new accounting standards that were implemented that had a significant impact on the town's financial statements. As I mentioned before, the financial statements do include some significant estimates and judgments. Those consist of the estimated useful lives that are assigned to capital assets, the discount rates that are utilized to determine pension and OPEB liabilities. We did review those, and we did deem them to be reasonable and consistent with what other municipalities are utilizing. Happy to report we had no significant difficulties encountered in performing the audit. We had no uncorrected misstatements. We had no disagreements with management. We will be obtaining a management representation letter. Again, there's nothing unusual. We will be requesting management to rep to. Again, I just give the board the example. If we were relying on a representation from management to substantiate a transaction, we would communicate that to you. And again, we're not aware of any consultations with any other independent accountants. If we were, we're required to disclose that to you. So in connection with the audit, we often will have certain recommendations that we will make as part of the audit. A lot of the times from a firm's perspective, if we don't consider them to be material weaknesses or significant deficiencies, both of which would require corrective action plans to be submitted to the Office of Policy and Management, and then ultimately be kind of oversight of the Board of Finance and the Board of Education. The firm has started to put more of these comments in writing. Again, they're not significant deficiencies, they're not material weaknesses, but these were the recommendations that we made as part of the audit. So the first item here is actually a carry forward from last year regarding some purchasing documentation. Again, we had no issues with our audit work over procurement. That being said, we would like to see a standardized form used to basically document the process that was used as part of that procurement process, and then have that document be maintained as part of your procurement files. The second item here talks about the year-end closeout of accrued purchase orders. This is something that I see in a lot of municipalities, especially with the accounting systems. They're kind of set up for the budgets, so where you could have encumbrances as part of the general fund. You wouldn't have them in other funds. So again, our recommendation is just to review all of your accrued purchase orders that are outstanding as of year end to ensure that any accrued purchase orders that represent an encumbrance rather than expenditure be closed out as part of the town's year end cutoff procedures. Again, not a significant issue, just a recommendation to go through that process as part of the year end. Reconciliation of interfund balances. Again, just like bank reconciliations, we're recommending that you do that on a monthly basis. This does also include reconciliation between the town and the Board of Education. Again, the systems are not fully integrated, so there are some transactions between the two. So again, the recommendation is to perform those more frequently That will help identify any potential issues between interfund activities.
Before you go to the next page, recommendation number one, that's the repeat transfer.
Yes.
Was not implemented, it was partially implemented.
Partially,
It was,
yeah.
So what would trigger that?
you don't want that to happen again in you.
Yeah, so it's really, so they had sent us a template form. We kind of modified it, made it a Town of Summers type form, and it's really for like all capital purchases
So
and
it's
so
for,
forth.
are you
So,
doing
like,
RFP or?
so when you go out to bid, or did you
Okay.
use a state
And I-
consortium? And I think, honestly, I think Stephanie's the only one who ever sent me one. And I think I couldn't remember if it was.
the only.
I think it might be the only one that
One
we
we
that we
used.
actually did, but it's more, like Todd's going to be the big
Yeah,
user of
right.
it in Public Works. It's just kind of getting the process, getting him familiar, you know, becoming part of like, hey, every time I go out to purchase something, even like down to the dock recently with the ARPA monies, like you need to document how you did it, and so it's just kind
So
of
it's like a checklist?
yeah,
type
it
thing?
really is like a checklist. It's what 8-10 items
Something
on
like
it.
that. I just took what Brian had and I created a school one, formatted the same exact way, all of the wording. I think I changed town to district in
Yeah.
one of the things. And I've given that out to all my administrators, and it's mostly gonna be technology, curriculum, and maintenance that end up using
Yeah, hopefully it's not, it is an additional administrative burden, but again, it is something that I think if, you know, the feds came in or the state came in, they would want to see that kind of documentation, especially if the person that was responsible for procuring the items is no longer there.
Yep.
Again, it's just kind of centralizes that documentation. I've actually had this comment in the past. It's kind of been a work in process.
Yeah.
I'd like to see the pension trust fund for the Board of Education on an accounting system. So again, right now there is a reconciliation that is done. They do get the pension reports. We do kind of assist in the audit process of, like I said, compiling that information to build a trial balance. Really internally, you should kind of be maintaining that documentation. So again, I'm going to work with Stephanie to kind of set up some templates that she can utilize and then effectively put that into her accounting system. And then also accounted for grant revenues on a modified accrual basis of accounting. Again, we've always kind of assisted in compiling the education grant funds, the student activity funds to build an actual trial balance. Her system is capable of doing that. So the recommendation is that you kind of take that over and do that internally yourself. Again, none of this stuff impacted your kind of compliance, your reporting with the state. It's more for financial reporting purposes. Something that we've always kind of assisted with, but again, something that I'd like to see you guys kind of take ownership of internally.
And with the new accounting system,
Yeah.
ProFund was not friendly to that.
Right.
So
Yeah.
bring up the new one.
Yep. And so again, those are the recommendations. There will be a formal letter that gets issued with those recommendations, and we'll follow up within the course of the next audit.
Did you, in your work, have occasion to look at the ambulance fund?
Yeah, so the ambulance fund is included in the financial statements. This year, it actually was included as a major fund.
Yep.
So again, that actually, we have to drill down a little bit more when we do the audit on it because it's its own major fund.
Okay. And you were satisfied with the operation of that fund?
Yeah, I mean, from a financial perspective, we didn't have any issues. Again, when you say operations, we're not necessarily looking at the operations of the fund itself, but the mechanism for the financial reporting of it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. In fact, I think we actually talked about it, potentially being an enterprise fund for financial reporting purposes because it is kind of self-sustaining in terms of, the fees that are being charged cover the cost of the services, if you will.
Yeah, I have to admit my absolute lack of accounting ability, but I have the most difficult time understanding the operation of the fund. And I don't know if other people here on the board have the same difficulty, but I know that it's very imperceptible in terms of trying to sort through it. It is an enterprise in some real sense.
Yep.
There is revenue that comes in, but I, to this day, don't know exactly where the revenue comes from, whether it's private insurance, Medicare, Medicaid. Brian has given us some estimates of the various.
It's a combination of all of that.
Right.
Yeah.
But we should be able, should we or should we not be able to identify those sources of revenue?
You do and you should, right? I mean,
And our billing company can. We don't, as far as our
oh,
books,
break it out from an
yeah,
accounting
we-
perspective.
From an accounting perspective,
Right.
we don't separate it
Yeah,
out.
so-
We could get we can ask the billing company to do that for us, but they're the ones who send the bills, take in the revenues. They handle it all. They just send us a report that says this is what was deposited, and
So if someone doesn't pay, who issues the
The
lien?
billing company.
They do all of that.
they do
for
all
you.
of that. Yep.
But you're at a loss as to the granular accounting of that.
Right.
Which resident
Right.
did or did not pay.
Right.
And this wouldn't be an issue if we were providing services to the residents of Summers only. But since we're providing a major portion of the services, and I won't venture a percentage because whatever percentage I might say is probably wrong, but a major portion of
Back
the,
up on that one.
Yeah, I don't see that level of detail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay. Any other further questions of Mike?
No.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks.
Nice job.
Sam and Tim are speaking.
Okay, great. Thanks, Bruce.
Yeah, I'll sit here so you guys can go.
Sorry, who's on?
He's
I have to leave the company.
He's-
Oh, that's right, too. Yeah. I didn't get where you were
Wanna
pointing.
take the-
That makes sense.
The
Put it on
hot
the
seat there, the
Yeah.
comfy chair.
Thanks, Mike.
He doesn't like being on camera.
Thanks, Bruce,
Oh,
for thinking.
Do I get the comfy chair?
We're a team. So I'll just give you, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I have 3 big points to inform you of, and then I'll let Steph answer any questions you have about her actual report that she generates. So one big thing for us is the transfer switch that we waited about 2 years for, right? Will be installed on the 26th of December.
That's the one at high school.
Yes.
Roger, yeah. So we're all queued up for that to happen.
Yes.
So hopefully there are no issues with that. As you know, the HVAC vote is tonight. My fingers are crossed. And also, we are grappling with, our district and other districts around the state are grappling with the Connecticut Paid Sick Leave Act, which takes effect January 1. So I've been in several meetings with superintendents there. That's if you work with us 120 days and work 30 hours, you can accrue 1 hour of paid sick leave for every 30 hours worked. So for us, it's like substitute teachers who we didn't right, we've never given sick time to would qualify for that, and also teachers. So it's a head scratcher, and I was with a group of superintendents today, and we're all trying to figure out how that's going to be calculated, because a lot of the systems are not set up on an hourly basis. It's usually a half day, full day kind of system. So those are just.
Is this on top of their contractual?
Not
Well-
necessarily. We could convert, starting in July, we could convert some of their sick time that we do allocate to them to an hourly amount of time. That will have to be calculated for every single employee in the district.
Fun.
Yep. For the January to June, it's a decision by the district. Every district will make a different decision. We're being advised by council on whether we should give them additional time on top of what they're contracted for, because it will just be easier. Or the other thing is, do we front load? Do we give them, it's up to 40 hours that they can earn. Do we front load them the 40 hours and hope that they work the number of hours to equal that? So it's a discussion that we've been having for like 2 weeks now, 3 weeks now.
So with the substitutes, and so is it based on like an average for a year? So I know like with the Affordable Care Act, you know, we've got part-timers that occasionally work 34, 35, 36, but you take their entire year and you divide it by 52 and you go, okay, they average 27, they're not eligible for benefits. Is that?
There's no language regarding that. It's for every 30 hours actually worked, they accrue 1 hour worth of paid sick time. And we have to give this time in hourly increments up to 40 hours, which could be a classroom coverage is a big concern. If a teacher wants to ask for the hour of 9 to 10 off to go to a doctor's appointment, how do we cover that 9 to 10 o'clock without hiring a substitute for half of a day? Also, for this first 40 hours of incremental time, they do not have to give us a reason why they need to take the time off. We assume that it is for sick time unless we are given evidence that it has not been used for sick time. And sick time can include anything for family members, people that live in your house, mental health, doctor's appointments, really for anything that could be related to.
So you don't have to implement January 1, you can phase in till July 1?
People have to be able to start accruing as of January 1. In July, we can kind of make a decision on whether are we going to give them 40 hours and take that 40 hours away from the days that we already allocate to them. Those are conversations that we'll have to see what is tracking this look like? How many man hours are we going to spend tracking and looking
on the
at
books.
every single
right.
Right.
You got a liability for the people, and then you got a liability for the subs.
Right.
I don't know. No one,
Right. I don't know how many hours subs are gonna work between now and June. So I don't want to front load them 40 hours of sick leave because then they could take all of this paid sick leave and then never work for us for the rest of the year.
No.
And how do you get that money back? You don't.
Right.
So it's I'm mostly concerned about tracking. How are we going to track this? How are we going to record it? How are people going to ask for the time off? How are we going to get coverage for classrooms?
I know our payroll system will accrue
Yes.
it.
Our payroll, yes, and we have started working on figuring out how that all works. It's the absence management. We use Frontline for our absence management, and that you can only, each employee has an account, and it can either be an hourly allotment of time or a daily allotment of time, and you can't mix the both.
Mm-hmm.
So there is an option that I've kind of thought about where staff members can customize the time that they're requesting. Right now we force them to choose either half or a full day. We can give them the option of custom, but that you have to do it across the board for everyone, for all of their time off. So it's sick time, personal days, vacation time, all has to have the ability to have custom. So are we just communicating to our staff, you can only use custom under the sick time, and then you can only use up to 40 hours, and then once you're done with the 40 hours, then it has to be a half or a full day, because that's what contractually your union contracts and what the district does. And you can't just shut off the custom for one person, you have to shut it.
It's a global setting.
It's everything.
And how do you know if somebody says, well, I need an hour to go to the dentist? And how do you track the fact that they took an hour and not an hour and 15 minutes? You don't.
You don't.
Yeah, because for
Because
teachers, there's no punch in,
right, there's no
punch out.
clocking in or clocking out,
Right.
and this is paid leave, so we wouldn't require a clock in or clock out of any staff member. So yeah, it is.
Well, the other challenge I would think is some teachers work longer hours than others.
Yeah,
It's-
right. So the majority of our teachers are contracted for 7.25 hours. We do have some teachers that work, they're a 0.7 or a 0.6 FTE and not working. Same with paras. Some paras work 7:40 to 2:10. Some paras work 9 to 2. Some paras, they're kind of all over the place. So it is the tracking of this that is going to be substantial.
Hmm.
What are you
You're
guys
just going
doing?
to have to see. Well, you guys are all hours, right?
Yeah,
We're all hourly.
And you guys don't get subs.
Yeah.
feet.
So now's the time that I'm
Sounds like you
maybe
need a
I'll work on the
programmer.
town side.
There's no module you can buy in the application?
No, I've
There you
already
go.
contacted them to ask them, like, this is gonna be a problem, like, you may, and the decision at some point may be to move away from Frontline and use a different product that,
Daily time and attendance at what we're using.
well, but can you mix hourly and daily? You
By
can,
plan.
okay, so that may be something that I do, is we
What product are you
pull
using?
it, it's
It's
school
through
ERP.
Through
Oh,
ERP,
school.
it's a
Oh,
module.
gotcha. Okay.
So we would just move everything over to that.
And you can set each individual plan however you choose.
But that's not something you can do overnight.
Oh no.
Oh,
Ours is a.
Nope,
We haven't
You
even
guys
gone,
have, like-
we haven't even gone live with it. It's going to be it was about a 6 to 8 month implementation.
I mean, even if
Yeah.
you started
if
today,
I started
you-
right now, I
you
wouldn't be
wouldn't
ready
make it
for
for
July.
July 1.
We started in October. We're looking to go live in April with ours.
And they're 3-4 times the size.
Yeah.
Right, with probably a lot more complication, because we've got the substitutes that have to be able to log in and punch in and all that.
Yep.
And choose jobs, and it'll be fun.
Yeah.
It's a new
Glad
challenge.
Glad I'm retired.
Are
My
there
retirement date is quickly getting closer.
Any specific questions about the report? Those were my highlights, and we have started working on our 25-26 budget.
Any questions? Thank you very much, Sam.
Thank you.
Stephanie?
Sure.
Sure.
If you're gonna need to buy that application, it'll be in next year's budget. request.
Potentially, or I would see how much is that through school ERP, and if we're getting rid of Frontline, we may,
Yeah,
that it may just
Yeah, but
be
you'd
a,
have to run in parallel for
Yeah.
a
Yeah, it's
year
about,
or so.
it's about
Potentially.
10 I think ours was about 10 grand for the
Oh,
year.
okay.
yeah, so I'll figure it out, but, it may just be something that I can absorb by changing softwares.
Tim?
Good evening, members of the board. First item I want to mention relates to the HVAC referendum. Three of your members, I think, Joe, Paul, and Kathy were at the town meeting last week at this time. And there were some concerns raised about people were unaware of what they were voting on, what it all means. There were questions asked. We tried to have a discussion, but it was clear that there was a certain amount of lack of information, particularly by the older population. So as a result, there was a senior center meeting set up by Maureen Purcell, our rec director, on Friday. So I went to that, and her purpose was just to reiterate what she does and all the different programs they've got available to them and rec programs that are available to the town. And then I filled in, of course, answering any questions that might come up with regards to the referendum. And needless to say, there were lots of them. And, I started off with the position that we had to be very careful as to what was said, because you can't be an advocate for one side of the vote or the other.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of limits the information that you can give them. However, at the same time, my purpose for being there was to try to give them as much information as I could about what the referendum was all about, how that they needed to get out there and vote, and they needed to get their friends and relatives and neighbors to vote as well. If they could, if they needed a ride, I'd give them one. I didn't get any requests, by the way. There's a town bus that also, Maureen jumped up and said, we have the town buses available to take you to the polls if you need to. So just to let you know that's I guess in retrospect, maybe we should have sent a flyer to each person's house. Now, there's an expense that goes along with that, of course.
But we said we couldn't, right?
We could have. By the time that we did it, it was too late to get it out. But
Yeah. So that's
Just
one
telling them to vote
one
is-
thing we
there-
can do in
there
the
will be a
future,
vote.
and what it's about. And I think the big question is, well, what happens if it doesn't pass? And that was never really explained to the public. And the answer is that we have a air handling system that's already been paid for, and we're planning on building. If it doesn't, if the air conditioning element, which cost an extra $4.5 million, was not passed, we go with the air handling system. So there will be an improvement through HVAC of the air quality that students breathe, and the temperature will probably be now. I think the experts told us in the hearings that we had that it wouldn't be above 78 degrees on the warmest day in the classroom. So you should just be aware that there is some confusion. There was and there is. We also had one woman who I've known for years who came, and she can be difficult to deal with because she asked so many questions. And she said, my husband and I just got in from out of town, haven't been away for 2 months, and we have no idea what's going on. So I explained to them the things that we had done, and we put it on the patch, it's on the town website, and a few other things, I think.
On Facebook.
Facebook,
McCaffrey was posting on Facebook.
But then there was concern about, well, what about seniors, that don't have computers? And I said, hey, you can go to the library, there's a computer that can be used in the senior center. So I mean, we had some people that were never going to be satisfied with the information they had, and just said, hey, we're just doing the best we can to get the word out as to what it is that's being voted on and why it's being voted on and why it's important. So that's the first point I want to make. Any questions on that one? The next thing I wanted to mention is that we've got an HR human resources generalist that we've hired. Her name is Erica Pascal. She lives in Munson, Mass. She's starting work on the 6th of January, and we're very excited about her arriving because she's had actual experience at the ground level in HR. She's also worked with businesses, primarily her family business, which I think was construction.
Yep.
And she gave a great interview. And she was very excited that she's coming on board. And she's going to be working directly in my First Selectman's suite of offices here. So we'll keep track of what's going on. And she's also going to be working with the finance department with regards to their payroll and anything else they want her to do. So she'll be busy. It'll be a part-time job, 20 hours a week, no more than 20 hours a week. And she's excited about starting, and we're very positive about all of that. Third thing I wanted to mention was the Somersville Mill apartment complex project. We had a meeting this past, was it Monday or Tuesday? It was Tuesday. Yesterday. There was a meeting with Wynn, the developer, our legislative reps being Senator Kissel and Representative Vail, our lobbyist, Zach Dendas, who works for Sullivan and Lachine in Hartford. And it was a Zoom meeting, but I think a very productive one, bringing everyone up to speed on where we are, what we need. One of the things that was pointed out by Senator Kissel that he wanted to know what the level of the town's commitment was to the project. So Mike and I are going to put that together. I sent you a draft, some points on it. But our commitment is significant. So I think that, and what we're doing is we're trying to position ourselves for a positive vote by the State Bonding Commission to provide an assistance for this project. And so one of the questions was, well, what's been our experience in that regard? And I said, we've never as a town asked for money before the State Bonding Commission, ever. So this is the first time. Obviously, we're looked at politically as a Republican town and fairly well off, and that doesn't help us much, So, but we've done a lot of things like the zoning change that was made specifically for this 5-acre site some 6 years ago, that allows, that looks at apartments as being sort of the highest and best use for the site, and acknowledges the fact that low-income housing is likely to be part of that, and that we've already gone through that. So there's no major obstacle in Summers like there are in many other towns in Connecticut, particularly Fairfield County. It's a battle with the town. I'm sure there'll be people in town that don't don't think it's a great idea because they like the open space or like walking their dog out there or just don't want to drive by a bunch of apartments. I don't know, whatever. And Senator Kissel mentioned, he said one thing you definitely ought to put in there is that the fact that this apartment complex is being built right across the street from the First Selectman's house. So that'll be positive. So that shows you embracing the project. They said, yeah, absolutely, we'll do that. So that I think it was a positive meeting. We do have a schedule that indicates that the WIN will not be seeking financial assistance through CHAFA. The CHAFA stands for the
Remember?
Housing Finance Authority, until January of 2026. Just to give you an idea of the schedule here. And we're trying to obviously line everything up and trying to do things in advance if we can. And we've gone to the bonding commission before to ask them for assistance with regards to a community center, so they know we've asked them for something in the past and we've got nothing. So that's supposed to work in your favor. I've been told. Politically, that's important.
How much are we asking for?
We're going to probably ask for, I don't know, probably $5 million, I think, is what we're going to. And it's a $37 million project. That's what the figure they've given us, WIN. We're going to ask for about $5 million of support. WIN explained to us that they expect the town to have some kind of financial contribution, town and or state, some kind of financial contribution towards this. And, you know, there are several things that we've already spent probably over $100,000 on engineering fees, environmental remediation work, investigation. By the way, we just got a report last Friday that stated the bedrock on that site has not been affected by the water pollution, which is great. So that minimizes immediately the amount of additional remediation that's necessary before you can put an apartment complex on top of that site. And we, as you know, we've had commitments from EDC, the Economic Development Commission, that support our request for $995,000 for environmental remediation support. We don't think it'll be that total amount will be necessary, but might be somewhere between $400,000 and $600,000. And they've told us that, well, they originally told us they approved it, but it was contingent upon WIN, the developer, coming in with 70% plans as to what it was they're going to build and what it was going to cost and all the financials that went with it. And WIN was telling us that that could cost them as much as $1 million. So they said, why do we want to spend that if we know we're not competitive with CHAFA? Because they've got to be, only something like 6 or 7 projects like this get funded a year through CHAFA. So it's kind of a chicken or egg thing, but we think that it's moving along in the right direction. The WIN uses Jay Malasinski as their lobbyist. I don't know if you know Jay Malasinski, but he's pretty famous in Hartford, as is Sullivan and Shane, of course. So between the two lobbyists, I felt like telling them at yesterday's meeting that you guys, this is a slam dunk, right? I mean, if you fail on this, forget about any kind of future arrangement. We're not interested. But we never got to that point.
Shame.
Yeah, but so it's moving along, and it's just going to take a little bit longer than we expected, but we think it's on course.
So Tim, I remember a while back you had said I think it was like $400,000 to $600,000 for some remediation work that needs to be done.
Yeah,
and I think we had some level of a conversation about maybe seeing if we could kick in some of it as an incentive to get it done.
Yeah, we did. We gave them. The town put in $60,000 to do some environmental investigation, bedrock drilling.
Yep.
For the bedrock on that site. That was been done over the last couple of months. A report was issued last Friday by GEI Consultants. It says there's no pollution in the bedrock.
So that was, I recall that we allocated $60,000.
It was at $60,000.
Appropriation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
That was an appropriation.
and this is the report that's the result
Right.
of that $60,000.
Mhm. Very positive, I think very well spent money, and that indicates that we have much less exposure on the remediation side. That needs to be cleaned up.
It seems to me that to the extent that we need to provide some support to get this thing moving, it's a long-term investment. Because with the value of this property, I understand there'll be some tax breaks for a period of time, but I think long-term it could be a hell of a good revenue source for the town.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Mike can talk about tax
Part of the
abatement.
financial equation is the tax abatement agreement. What is the value of that? It's usually in a 15 or 16-year period. That gets plugged into their entire capital stack as a town contribution.
I also personally have mentioned to the Water Pollution Control Authority in one of their recent meetings that the town would be interested in first of all, they've got some remediation work, as you probably know, that they're doing at that site, and they received a $1 million grant through Congressman Courtney almost 3 years ago. And it still hasn't been spent yet, but they had some recent estimates as to what it was going to cost, and it was going to be another like $1.2 million or something on top of $1 million. It's coming in, so they're gonna need to borrow some money. So one of the things that Mike has come up with is this idea that maybe we could give them an interest-free loan in exchange for their allowing sewage treatment hookups for the apartments at less than what they normally charge, which is $6,000 per unit. So that would be a form of contribution that the town could make towards this project, and also an example of our commitment that we want this thing to work.
Yeah.
So there wasn't a lot of discussion about that at the meeting because it was a new idea that was just brought up. But I thought I should just plant that seed in their head with the water pollution control people, the committee, that that's something down the road we're going to be needing to address. And the last item I wanted to bring up was the Stafford ALS, and Brian can talk about this. The volume is down. We're down to like 9 calls last month.
Yep, October and November both.
That we had to go on, and which is a lot less than what was the average that we've had.
In the 20s.
It was about 20 a month,
Yeah.
20 to 25.
So we believe
single digits is.
we believe
is
that
good.
Trinity is filling in, which is awesome, of course. And
What's accounted for the drop in calls?
we think that Trinity's filling in.
Trinity's just taking more calls.
The vacuum, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's all good. And with regards to the fund itself, I disagree with the chairman here that this is causing a big drain on the town.
I didn't say it was causing a big drain on the town. I said what exactly was the case, and that is a portion of the calls are devoted to Stafford.
Yeah, but you made it sound like the large.
That may be in your mind, Tim, but
Well, I don't know
I'm
what
trying
other
to
people
understand
heard.
it.
Yeah,
you
okay.
know? I'm
That's
trying
good.
to understand things.
That's great.
Okay.
Again, this is an off-budget fund, and I'd just like you to be aware of that.
You think that I'm
Off
not?
budget.
You think
Well,
that
we're
I'm
now
not
being-
aware of the fund?
No, it's off-budget, which means that the Board of Finance had little to do with it.
Oh, that's not the case at
Well,
all.
we're now being compensated by Stafford, so it's.
I think you've
balancing-
worked
it's
on the
balancing
problem.
out.
I don't have any question about that. But I've seen the ambulance fund documents that
Yeah.
Brian has prepared, and I can see the numbers on them, but I tell you, I don't understand
Mm-hmm.
what the cost of those services are based on that off-budget fund.
Yeah.
And I think
We were
the
building-
members of the Board of Finance should understand what the cost of the services are, both in terms of the global effect of the fund and what we're spending over in Stafford.
Great.
I would say I've actually talked to Brian about this just to better understand it, and he was able to explain it to me in a way that. Don't ask me to repeat it, but he was able to walk me through the history of the deficits and when they figured out what the average loss was per, and that happens to be what Stafford is paying. So I would suggest talk to Brian, anyone, or
Well, I have talked to Brian, and
'Cause
I've met with Brian a couple of times
Yep.
to talk about it, and he's been very helpful.
Yeah.
And we've got a billing agency that we use that's very helpful as well with regards to determining where the revenues are coming from, whether it's insurance, Medicare, or Medicaid to cover our expenses.
I think we have a right, and Bruce and I and others who have talked to Brian have done it in a very collegial and friendly way to try to understand what's going on.
Glad to hear.
And I just don't think you need to make this an antagonism. It's just
Well, we've been threatened before that,
Well, you haven't been threatened by anybody. We respect what you do, and we respect what Brian has done, and
That's good to
he's
hear.
been very open with us and talking about it. I'm still not there. I still don't understand everything, and I'll continue to keep talking to him until I do. But
talk to them all you want.
Door's always open.
yeah.
and
I would say to the extent that other people would want to hear, maybe you can do a little mini presentation, just explain how we got to where we did, because I think it helped me understand the
Yeah,
process a lot.
we've been working on this for close to 3 years now. It seems like it's been a huge focus, and we combed through multiple years of data versus actuals. We computed average cost per call. We looked at the various revenue sources. Some insurance companies have agreements that they pay less than others do, regardless of the call. With Medicare being the biggest, Medicare only pays one provider. So if we show up in Stafford, Stafford gets the bill and the town of Summers does not. And so taking all those kind of factors in, we came up with an average loss per call, which is what we eventually came to an agreement with Stafford to bill for, the additional $250 for every call that we go there. When you average it all out, 20% of their calls are private insurance, where we're getting $800-900 from the insurance company, and 60% of their calls are Medicare, where we're getting $150. So you're trying to find that happy medium. I believe we found it. It seems to be working out well for everyone. We're billing it separately to the town so that we can track it. They send them an invoice on the total number of intercepts. In October it was 9. In November it was also 9. So it's a minimal expense to the town over there to pay for the service that they're getting, and then their residents' insurance is making up the variance as well. So we're breaking even. We might be making a couple of bucks. The good thing is it doesn't look like we're going to lose money. And as long as we're breaking even, that's really the purpose of the service to begin with. It's what we do in town too. We just try to break even.
It's probably going to take 6 months to really have a good handle.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We put in a lot of work too when the new chief came on board. This year, the state of Connecticut decided not to just do an across-the-board rate increase for every town like they normally do. So this year, if you wanted to submit a request for a rate increase, you had to do what's called the long form. And when I say it's a long form, it's a very long form that you have to fill out. And it was a lot of work. It was multiple hours between myself and the chief and the deputy chief down there, Matt Atwood. We spent multiple hours compiling data and putting everything together. We submitted it to the state. We requested an 8% increase in our fees. We were granted 4%, so we took it. Not a lot of towns in the state take the time to do the long form. It makes sense why they don't. But effective January 1, all of our billing rates will go up an additional 4%. So, an intercept call will be able to bill it $1,121 versus $1,078. And while it doesn't seem like it's a lot, an extra $50 on every call is still an extra $50 towards making sure that we're breaking even.
They have the tracker on the firehouse. The sign
Yep,
actually
big
tracks
sign.
the number of calls
Yep.
this year.
Yep. So yeah, we'll continue to monitor it, and we did set up a separate line item just for these invoices that are going to Stafford strictly for the intercept calls. So when those invoices get generated, we immediately recognize the revenue, and we set up a receivable. And when Stafford pays it, we'll write off the receivable. But to us, it's that's our modified accrual system of accounting.
The private billing definitely brought them to the table. I think
Yes.
that's some
Yeah.
people showing up at their office
Yes.
pretty
Yeah,
unhappy.
they agreed to something that we presented last March. They turned us down flat. We
Yep.
presented again in June, and they turned us down again with no negotiation whatsoever. Then in
And then in
September,
September, they came
I
crying.
said,
and
"What
we
you offer us it for? Looks great.
Yep.
We'd love to do it."
Yep.
Okay.
Mike said to do that 2 years ago.
That's right.
It's a process.
It is a process.
How much do you have in the ambulance reserve now? Are you?
On a cash basis, about 1.4 million. On a fund basis, about 850, 900,000. They really the additional cash is just the amount that is we transfer it back and forth when the general fund pays the payroll. The ambulance fund has to reimburse the general fund for it.
So
for
when you
the
say
actual
you're
payroll.
pulling reserves here, you're pulling reserves for the budget to balance the budget
Right.
from the ambulance.
From the
reserve.
ambulance. Yep.
Understood.
And when will you do that again?
So
December?
it has been done for fiscal year 24 now. Now that once we got through, cleaned up, made sure all the audit was all correct. It's been done for fiscal 24. Based on your recommendation, we'll start doing it more often in fiscal 25. I haven't done one yet, but I figure that we're about to hit the end of December. This week is the last payroll for the calendar year, so we'll true everything up before the end of the month, and then we'll probably start doing it more on like a quarterly basis, just to make sure that.
So why don't you just, if you need 1.25 million to run it, why don't you just start with 1.25 and pull it all out and then run it? And instead of all this accounting to the general fund back and forth, just
It
has to work for you. not-
Right. Well, so all of their expenses are paid for by the ambulance fund. We cut the checks out of there. So
Yeah.
when they order med
Understand.
supplies and stuff the only true accounting difference is the payroll, because our payroll system can't do it out of multiple funds. So the general fund cuts all the payroll, and then we go, okay, we look at it. What we're going to start looking at is more on a quarterly basis. Is the third quarter expenses for payroll were this? We transfer the cash back to write off
Yes.
that. And then we'll be transferring the expense for the insurance benefits to the fund.
You're just doing general ledger entries to
Yeah.
move the money around.
Yeah.
I mean, we did the same thing in the Board of Regents. You probably do it. Just-
But there's no net deficit to the general fund because
No.
of
No.
ambulance
Right.
fund.
Right.
No, that part I
The
get.
auditor would have told you that today.
Yeah, that part we get.
Okay, any questions?
I have one. Mike, you were saying with back to the mill thing for a second. The town contribution is just a reduced tax for a period of 15 years, or staged.
That's part of the town's contribution.
Got it.
We also have land. We have a land lease. There's value to that. He's talking about the sewer connection fee.
Yep.
That would be around $400,000.
Yep.
Yep.
We have to kind of make that a contribution.
Mm-hmm.
But we're two separate entities. The WPCA and the town are two separate entities. Now,
Yeah.
in the past, the town has given them interest-free loans, and the finance department keeps track of all that.
Yeah.
For the amount that they need, it's almost an equivalent. It's about $500,000. The interest would be on a 10 or 20, I forget what it is. So we would say, we'll give you an interest-free loan, and then we're gonna use that 500,000 as a contribution of the town.
Yep.
So,
Okay. But over a period of time. I
It's
mean,
one
this
year.
is found money.
yes, it's all over a period, well, not the sewer fee, that's a one-time upfront fee.
Right, but I mean, the property taxes.
Taxes over a period of time,
Yep.
usually 15, 16 years. You have a tax abatement agreement or a tax stabilization, or fixed tax, you call it, whatever you want to call it. The town is obviously going to contribute. We know, but we're going to know the fair market value of the property. We're going to know the subsidies for all the rents.
Mhm.
And then basically, this is the easiest way to explain it. The difference of the two is the subsidy, and that's what the town is going to foot through the taxation.
In the
That's
past,
how
when
you-
we've given those loans to WPCA, how long have they taken to pay them back?
The last one was a 10-year loan.
Yeah, I'm thinking 10.
Yeah.
And what do they have for reserves?
I remember Steve Krasinski
They got-
asking me every month
Yeah,
about
where
that.
are they at?
They got 400,000 or 500,000 in
So
reserves.
they don't have enough to cover this.
No.
And they have to maintain a certain level of reserves like the town does.
Yep.
So they're probably at their minimum.
They're above their minimum, what they would need, but they don't have enough to foot the bill.
But also remember bringing on additional apartments. We're talking anywhere from 60 to 80 apartments. It's going to bring in additional revenue
100%.
on an annual
No,
basis
yeah.
to
That's great.
WBCA.
It's a very
And
large,
they've got the
complicated
capacity.
formula.
They got the capacity to handle the,
Yeah.
the volume. So it's
Yeah.
not.
No, it's a win for us.
Yep.
I don't
Yeah,
understand why the
that's-
bonding commission wouldn't approve this, because you're looking at low-income housing. I mean, it's, like you said, it's a slam dunk.
Which is a big push for Lamont.
Yeah, I mean-
Yeah. I mean, we're trying to make every step we can, easy baby steps. But,
Yeah.
make sure.
Well, I'm glad Wynn is still interested.
Oh yeah, and they are. So am I.
Because there was a time you were worried
Like I
about
said,
that.
because if Wynn can't do it, I don't think anybody can.
Yeah, I don't think
I
anybody
think
else
that they've
will.
got a reputation. They're
Done
well
it.
respected. They've got a reputation in Connecticut, even not just New England.
Results.
So
Yeah.
I don't have the results yet. I just I was looking. It looks like they are close. We had 318 votes. So
I guess 300.
I'll be curious to see what the results are.
So we gotta
Anything
run
further,
down.
Tim?
Nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brian?
So I'll scratch ambulance off my list. We already talked about that.
Yep.
Budget to actuals. I sent to you guys. Quarterly, I've been putting together revenues as well, so it's got the first quarter revenues in there as well. And then I attached the ambulance breakdown for it as well. If you like, I can continue to do these monthly as well. It's very easy to just generate within the system. But that top line that you see on it, the intercept agreements, is where that's what we're billing. That's the $250 per call. So we've got 1 month in there right now, as of 11/30. The second month will go in. You'd see it in December when the bill was issued. And I have reached out as well to the town of Ellington and to their ambulance service to work out basically the same agreement with them that we have with Stafford. Stafford's for the last 2 months has been 9 calls each month. Ellington has been 7 and 8 respectively between October and November. So they're basically as much of a user as Stafford is. So I feel it's proper to put everybody on the same playing field. So we've reached out to them. We're hoping to come to the table after the first of the year and start working out the same basic agreement with them. So we'll start seeing them paying for their costs as well. And then
What's happening in Ellington that their calls have gone up?
I'm not sure. I'm not really sure. I don't know if it's Rockville Medic isn't available as much. I'm not sure.
Don't have an ALS level.
In Ellington, no. Rockville Medic is their primary, and then we're like 2 or 3 on the list. It just
The
seems
same
like
scenario.
Yep. So
I think
we
it's
took
good
care
that
of the
you're-
big player first, and now we're moving down the list. After Ellington, everybody else is like maybe one a month, so it's not even worth trying to hash out.
I think it's good that you try to get ahead of the game with
Yep.
especially if their calls are going to go up.
Right.
It's good.
And then supplemental tax bills went out last week. That was for $448,645. Those are for motor vehicles that were registered after the October 1st grand list date. It's about 1,650 bills. And then they sent out reminders for the second half payments for houses and motor vehicles that had already been sent. So the 448,000 is, we never work that number into our budget because you never know what it's going to be. It could be, it's been as low as about 205,000. This is probably the highest I've ever seen it be. So it helps that collection get closer to the budget when those go out.
Are we over a
Did you
billion
say-
on the grand list? Excuse me.
We are right at $1 billion, yeah.
About time.
The supplemental is for newly purchased items?
Items that were purchased after October 1st of 2023.
Okay.
So the bills that were generated in July were for anything that was on the list as of that date.
Okay.
And so anything that was purchased or registered after that date gets a supplemental bill. And they're billed for the number of months that they have had the vehicle for, basically. That system is changing in the coming year. It's a it's a more complicated process for DMV, but we'll be sending out supplemental bills more on a quarterly basis instead of a once a year basis. Monthly, the DMV will be reporting to us new cars every month. The town is at will to bill how they choose. For cost purposes, we probably will not be billing monthly, just because you got to pay a vendor to generate those and send those out, so it's not really cost effective. So there will be a change in process though in the coming year, based on the new state law that has gone into effect regarding motor vehicle billing.
You think quarterly or?
Probably quarterly is my guess.
There's also a new way of valuing.
Yeah, there's a new valuation
And,
system.
Could be having a reduction in the grand list of cars.
Yep. It's now all going to be strictly based off of a MSRP, and then there's a scale based on how many years away from the car you are as the percentage of the MSRP that your car will be valued at. Cars are no longer will no longer be able to come in front of Board of Assessment Appeals and be revalued. The only thing that can be changed is if we got the MSRP wrong. But it could be a totaled vehicle that's sitting there on 4 wheels, and if it's a 2022 and it's still sitting in your driveway, it is worth that dollar amount. We don't care that it's been wrecked. The state does not care anymore. They have changed the system, and it's just what we have to follow.
I'm just curious, what about all the rehab vehicles, the 70 Dodge Darts and Challengers? What happens with those?
If you apply for the antique, you'll still get the $500. Nothing will be below $500 anymore. So if you put it on the antique plates, it'll be valued at $500, and that's what you'll pay your tax bill on.
I mean, it might be worth 100,000 or 200,000.
It might be, and we have a couple of those. There is I think it's still in town, but there was a Lamborghini Countach a couple of years ago that we were looking up, and it was like a $315,000 car, and because it's a 1992, it's an antique, and so it's $500. Yeah, pretty crazy. Loopholes in the system.
Anything further, Brian?
That's it.
Any questions for Brian?
No, sir.
Okay. Any appropriations and transfers you want to talk about?
There's one transfer. This went through the Board of Selectmen back at the beginning of November. Back in April, the Board of Selectmen approved a $2 shift premium for school resource officers. At that time, the budget had already been approved, so this is just to transfer money from one line item to a newly created SRO shift premium line item to cover the cost for the fiscal year expense of the $2 extra an hour.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any further questions of Brian on the transfer? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Is there any other business
I don't
before
have
the
any
Board of
unless
Finance?
anybody else does.
How about minutes for October 22nd, 2024?
Motion to approve.
Second to approve. Second, any comments, questions, concerns? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Joe? Big
Move to adjourn.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
I would have thought you would have sprinted downstairs.
Right? I figured you had already been down there,
I
Sam.
figured you might know before us.
Yeah,
I won't know until I walk downstairs, too.
It's on the way out.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas.